Every life
ends with us.
So when I had first started playing Kindred, I often told my friends that my initial thoughts about her was that she was everything I had wanted in Jungle Vayne. However, once I had started taking her to other lanes like top and bottom, and even mid once or twice, I eventually came to the conclusion that she, as of right now, is essentially an entirely superior version of her. Minus the very late game, since Vayne always carries the very late game. In this video, I'll be addressing some of the key differences in their kit where Kindred really outshines Vayne. Especially so since Vayne's silver bolts were nerfed at the start of Season 6, and a majority of the other marksmen were buffed. Kindred's Dance of Arrows is almost entirely superior to Vayne's Tumble, provided that Vayne does not have Final Hour active. And of course, even if Vayne's Final Hour is active, I actually think it's a little bit questionable whether or not that makes Vayne's Tumble better. Kindred's Dance of Arrows goes on cooldown the moment it is cast. However, Vayne's Tumble goes on cooldown the moment Vayne releases her auto attack. This makes the potential cooldown on Tumble a lot bigger than it might seem when she's trying to chase down an enemy. And it makes it really long when she's trying to escape from combat. Vayne can only tumble a set distance. She cannot dash any shorter or any further. The only exception to this is if she tumbles into terrain. Kindred, on the other hand, can jump anywhere between minimum range to max range, and of course, she can jump over walls. This gives her much greater control over how to position herself during team fights. Lastly, Kindred's Dance of Arrows sets her up to do way more damage than Vayne's Tumble does. Dance of Arrows, of course, is not an auto attack modifier, but we can sort of think of it this way because it resets Kindred's auto attack timer, much in the way Vayne's Tumble does. Thinking of it this way makes it glaringly obvious that Dance of Arrows is a quote-unquote auto-attack modifier that over doubles Kindred's attack damage at level 1. How much damage does Vayne's Tumble get off at level 1? 30% bonus attack damage. Oh no. It doesn't even gain bonuses off crit. Although Vayne does have an interesting technique where she can clip her tumble animation by tumbling into the wall and get her auto-attack off faster. You know, for those situations where you're going to want to tumble into the wall, which happens all the time. In all seriousness though, Vayne's Tumble Cancel is a little bit useful for attacking targets that are standing still. For example, Dragon or Baron Nashor. It's also worth noting that Kindred is able to do this animation cancel with her Q, but it's a lot harder and it's not very consistent. The next thing I'm going to compare is Kindred's Mounting Dread and Vayne's Silver Bolts.
Sonic Wave connects, there's some damage on Timothy. Shook is in the minions though. The one that's in trouble, and wow! Wolf wants.
So not only does Kindred's Mounting Dread do way more damage on proc in the early game, but she also doesn't have to commit to attacking the same target 3 times. She is free to switch targets and it won't remove the stacks, unlike Silver Bolts. This makes triggering the bonus damage much easier for her. Some of you may be thinking, wait a minute, this isn't a fair comparison. Silver Bolt is always active and can be procced at any time, but Kindred's E requires that you set a target and also has a very long cooldown. This is a fair point, and I will address this when we get to the playstyles of both characters and why Vayne's fall short. One of Vayne's biggest weaknesses is that she can't trade with the opponent without committing to a full skirmish or fight. If you want to tumble into your opponent for harass, you need to make sure you're already in the perfect spacing for the tumble so that you don't tumble too close or too far, because as mentioned before, the travel distance on tumble is locked. Even if you do manage to find this perfect spacing, the enemy can use your tumble as an opportunity to initiate on you and unload all of their abilities for much more burst damage than you can return. Because Silver Bolts just doesn't do nearly as much damage as an activated ability in the early game, and also, Condemn without a wall pin does extremely minimal damage. Adding on to Vayne's awful early game damage, Vayne doesn't have any abilities I would like to call non-committal trading tools. That is, abilities she can use to harass the opponent that the opponent can't respond with offensively. If Vayne tumbles towards Lucian, Lucian can straight up fight her. On the other hand, if Lucian casts Lightslinger and he hits the Vayne at max range, there's nothing Vayne can do about it on her own except get healed or shielded. Listing off a few other examples of non-committal trading tools, we have Ashe's Volley, Graves' End of the Line, Jinx's Rocket Launcher, Kog'Maw's Bio-Arcane Barrage, Caitlyn's ridiculous attack range in Piltover Peacemaker, virtually everything in Ezreal's kit,
Who needs a map?
and Sivir's Boomerang Blade. Now, you may think that Kindred doesn't really have any tools for safe harassment, but actually, Wolf's Frenzy accomplishes this very well. Not only is the healing passive very good for sustaining, but if your opponent's not paying attention, the active can actually do a lot of free damage. The max potential damage at level 1 is somewhere around 240. Not only that, casting Wolf's Frenzy in neutral doesn't really affect your ability to escape if a fight suddenly breaks out. If your opponent rushes in on you, provided that you're spacing properly, you can still leap outside of the circle and get a free refresh. It's also worth noting that Kindred's Dance of Arrows plus Wolf's Frenzy allows her to wave clear if she needs to, which is something that Vayne completely lacks. Unfortunately, I don't really have any clips to show of this, so you can just have a crappy highlight instead. To conclude, as of right now, Vayne is simply a champion with very few tools that are good at keeping her relevant in the early game. And on top of this, her kit lacks the utility to allow her to catch up if she does fall behind. Because even her ultimate is an ability that necessitates that she goes all in on the opponent, even if she is at a disadvantage. Picking Vayne in any game is the equivalent of resigning yourself to fighting an uphill battle and having your support lead the most of the fights for you. Kindred, on the other hand, deals much more upfront burst and sustained damage in the early game, has a passive which sustains her, has another passive that functions as a level 5 Silver Bolts at around 6 stacks, except it deals physical damage, and has a game-changing ultimate that can virtually always level the playing field of a one-on-one duel, and allows her to be useful to her team even when she herself is behind, while having the ability to snowball reasonably hard, even though it's not to the degree that Vayne can.
Let us hunt those who have fallen to darkness.